This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com with my weekly Wrestling Observer newsletter. There wasn't a lot of really interesting information in it this week to me, but there is some interesting information. So I'll keep it shorter than usual, but there is good information in it. It's worth listening to. Some of it I've already reported, such as WWE officially released Gerald Briscoe this week after 36 years with the company. He had been a talent scout for about the past 10 years or so. Very good asset to the company. They also released Erwin R. Shyster, otherwise known as Mike Rotundo, the father of Bray Wyatt, or the Fiend, or whatever you want to call him, and Sarah Stock. Now, I think they'd already furloughed all three of them. Sarah Stock, I actually knew because back when I was having WWE extra jobs between like 2004 and 2006, she was also at most of those Canadian tapings getting extra jobs too. So I would talk to her back there. And when they furloughed her, I actually looked her up, and it seemed like she had moved into a van and was living out of a van. So I actually thought she was fully released. So yeah, sorry to hear about that for her. Gerald Briscoe, that's their loss. They could still use him, but they weren't listening to him anyways. He suggested that they hire me back in 2016, and after agreeing to give me a chance, they told him that, quote, they already had enough information on me, and it canceled my tryout. And Lance Storm was also one of the recently released ones. For some reason, I haven't heard about Sylvain Grenier being released, who has been the only guy they hired back that was part of the concussions lawsuit, which the appeal was also dismissed on this week. But it's weird. Every single one of those people are more talented than Sylvain Grenier. But I guess Vince is tighter with Pat Patterson. He still is a consultant or something. And Grenier's always been known as Patterson's boy. I would release Grenier before I release Gerald Briscoe. But apparently a lot of these releases have to do with, according to Meltzer, he believes that there's going to be less WWE live events. If the world ever goes back to normal, we're not really seeing a light at the end of the tunnel here anytime soon, but it is believed that WWE is not going to run as many live events because they weren't profitable. Last year, for instance, with no lockdown, they canceled more live events than in the company's history because the current crop of talent doesn't draw. So they're likely only going to put live events on in the major markets, like probably MSG, Toronto, probably Montreal here in Canada, probably Chicago, and in the UK where they draw better, and other places, Saudi Arabia. But Dave Meltzer feels there'll probably be less house shows, which would be great for independent wrestling and the possibility of territories coming back. Because I always notice for Great North Wrestling, for instance, when I was young, WWE would come to my town, Ottawa, usually 4 times a year, every 3 months. Now, in recent years, they come maybe once or twice a year, but some years it's only been once a year. And I do notice when they've put on less house shows in this area, more people turn out to independent events the years that WWE comes less, because those wrestling fans are still hungry for some live action. So I'll digress for a second as Joshua Long tipped me $4.99. He's one of the vampires up at 4:49 in the morning and says I should be in WWE now. Politics sucks. Thanks for the channel. I wouldn't want to be in WWE. When I wanted to grow up being in WWE, I was a kid of the 80s and 90s, it was that product of the 80s and 90s that I liked, not the current product. YouTube, probably if I was a kid now, I would have wanted to be an MMA fighter. But now I just want to grow as a reporter. And also, speaking of Great North Wrestling, I want to keep going with my own company. And I really like female wrestling. And I believe female wrestling is still at an all-time popularity. So I think when Great North Wrestling is continuing on, you're going to see more female talent and higher quality female talent. Like we have Lufisto as our Canadian champion right now for our female division in Great North Wrestling. I'd love to see Amber Nova in Great North Wrestling, who Sunday night at 9, there's another live Q&A with. Love to see Taylor Hendricks in Great North Wrestling. And I've watched ladies matches. There's so many I've been scouting, and there's a lot of top female talent I would like to see. But back to the news. And McIntyre, by the way, his big return on Raw after not wrestling for a while. I guess I haven't been following it, but it said for his return on Raw, they were back in the 0.4 ratings this week. They did a 0.48 for the Dominic Mysterio Boar Fest. He actually swung the cane. I saw the Twitter clip of him swinging a cane at, I think the guy's name is Murphy, who he had a street fight with, and it was him and two females in the ring, and the females swung the cane harder than Ray did, or Ray, or whatever his name is, Dominic. Either way, he's already come out and said that him and Seth Rollins hugged after their SummerSlam match, and him and Ray and Seth and Jamie Noble all sat down and put it together. So how could I ever be invested in this storyline? Just because they put him in those stupid multicolored garbage bag like jumpsuits. It looks like a multicolored garbage bag that he's wearing to hide the fact that he doesn't look like he works out. But apparently part of the deal of Rey Mysterio re-signing is let's sign Dominic too and give him a push. Something that maybe AEW didn't want to agree with, which probably was a good decision by AEW. Very rare that the second generations ever do better than the first. The one that stands out that has is The Rock. SmackDown did a 0.61 last Friday night. Originally it was 0.55, but I guess they added some other viewers over a couple days later and got 0.61. AEW went unopposed this week, did a 0.37 rating. NXT went unopposed and did a 0.22 rating. Something very interesting about AEW, though. They're only putting between 500 to 750 tickets on sale now that they're allowing live fans back. And neither this week or last week did they come close to selling out. According to the Wrestling Observer, this week they only had 300 fans in attendance at AEW at a place that was set up to hold between 500 and 750 fans. So that goes to show you can't even get 500 to 750 fans, Chris Jericho, but you claim you're some type of wrestling god. That is fucking pathetic. Great North Wrestling has got more than that many times on my budget. We've had upwards of 4,000 fans in the past. Our last event in Smith Falls had 400 fans, which is a town of 10,000 people, and you can only get 300 fans for a TNT taping in Jacksonville, Florida, with your whole roster. That's pretty funny. Rusev, who apparently doesn't mind other men making outs with his wife, signed a multi-year contract with AEW that apparently is going to let him work certain outside dates, according to the Wrestling Observer. Forbes came out. Oh, by the way, I'll mention this again because it's funny. Rodney Mack, I interviewed yesterday. Check it out on here. He was married to Jazz. He still is married to Jazz, two-time Divas champion. I'm interviewing her Saturday at 5 on this channel. I asked him what he thought about the Rusev allowing his wife to make out with Lashley, and would Rodney Mack have allowed Jazz to do that? He said, hell no. He would not have done that. And then they fire Rusev after that. So really, what is his value? What is his value? How could anyone respect him? I can't respect a man that allows his wife to make out with another man on top of him. That's fucking pathetic. That is so pathetic. And anyone that thinks that's cool, wow. You must be a Jim Cornette fan too, then, if you think that's cool. Forbes came out with its list of the 400 wealthiest Americans, and the owner of AEW, Shad Khan, was listed at number 66, worth $7.8 billion. Vince McMahon did not make the list of 400 wealthiest Americans. So Shad Khan can definitely afford this little AEW toy for his son, Tony. Jack Evans, an old friend of mine from Mat Rats and Stampede, who I haven't seen literally since I wrestled in Stampede. Also known for beating up Juventud Guerrera. Good job, Jack. I could put it this way. Jack is such a relaxed guy. If you could piss him off enough to attack you, man, you must be a real asshole. But unfortunately, he has a hairline fracture in his cheekbone, and he's not cleared to compete. In a National Wrestling Alliance news, the reboot of the NWA, where they take group pictures after their tapings with heels and faces all smiling beside each other. Apparently the bookers are Nick Aldis. Yes, the champion is a booker. Aaron Stevens, who was Damian Sandow, and David Marquez, who I told the story about on this channel a couple weeks ago. So Nick Aldis is one of the bookers for the NWA. In Impact Wrestling news, apparently Tessa did not sign a new deal with them because Impact believes she got a better offer somewhere else. What, a better offer than Impact? A show no one even watches? Their highest rated show of the year was a 0.5. I remember when that happened. They actually released their rating for the first time in forever. Or 0.05, sorry, not 0.5. The highest rated Impact this year was reportedly a 0.05. And they made a big deal about how great that was. They haven't released ratings since, to my knowledge. Of course, Tessa got a better offer than the Oblivion world of Impact Wrestling, where they think they can put a 125-pound girl over all their top talent. And actually, remember when Karrion Kross, Impact stopped using him because he refused to lose to Tessa? Then he becomes the NXT champion, and unfortunately he's derailed because of a shoulder injury. But now he's like the hottest star in WWE. And Impact had him sit out for the last bunch of his contract because he wouldn't job to Tessa. Why didn't you make him your champion and push him? I bet you he wouldn't have screwed you over. I've met him, and he seems like a stand-up guy. In UFC news, they officially announced they're returning to Abu Dhabi's Yas Island from September 26th to October 24th. Series of events. Jacques Rougeau's podcast started this week. He was on my show last week talking about this podcast he started. It's a French podcast. And apparently George St. Pierre was on it this week. He said that him and Hulk Hogan are friends. He said that he'd be open to doing appearances for WWE, but nothing full time. He would love to come in at the end of a battle royal and knock people out. Wow, wouldn't that be great for wrestling? An MMA guy to just come in and show how much better he is than all the wrestlers. It would draw. I'm not saying it wouldn't draw. I'm just saying that it wouldn't help long-term for wrestling. He also said he's positive he would beat Khabib if that fight ever took place. Randy Cotoure, who's now 57, was injured on September 7th in an ATV accident on his ranch in Arizona. He's having orthopedic surgery and is expected to make a full recovery. I interviewed Randy Cotoure last year. It's up here on this channel. I really like him. Have a lot of respect for him. Horace Stew says, would I use Tessa for Great North Wrestling event? She was supposed to wrestle for us back in 2017 versus Lady Yasmin. But unfortunately, her connecting flight got delayed, and she ended up sitting in Washington for the day and then flying home. It was really annoying because that would have been great for Great North Wrestling. And Lady Yasmin, she's one of the biggest stars of the Hannibal TV. She's got several matches in the millions of views, and I think 5 matches in the hundreds of thousands. So I can only imagine what Yasmin versus Tessa would have had. Big Trips, keeping it real, says move my company to San Diego. And he also says AEW is still pushing that twerp. Orange Cassidy, man, the people they're catering to are the people that are going to watch no matter what. They're not catering to the mainstream. Yes, they get more viewers when it's unopposed because the hardcore of the hardcore, the NXT fans are going to tune in. But no one's seeing that and thinking it's cool. I'm sorry, but they're not. And would I move to San Diego? I'd love to move to California. Actually, I'd love to move to Arizona. But it's a process. I will switch my company to an American company, though, in the future. It's already cold here. It's already freaking cold out. Okay? A couple weeks ago, I was still running at night with my shirt off. This week, it can't be done. 1777 Memorabilia says, what's up? By the way, as I read your comments here, Joshua Long says, love Ray, but Dominic is totally riding his dad's coattail. It is fucking sad, man. They're really shoving him down our throats. Dangerous Danny Davis, though, 10 a.m. Saturday morning, live interview. Tune in for that. Archer Calculator SK says, interesting how AEW got solid ratings without matches from Omega, the Bucks, and Cody. Interesting, but there was no competition. They ran without NXT, so more people are going to watch too, because usually they have to choose. Some fans watch both, but usually they have to choose. Fred S. says AEW has to be losing money. I think they have a big TV deal. Wrestling companies are funded by TV deals now. The big Bo Fetty says Jericho is so fat now. He has to wrestle with a shirt on. He's so bloated. It's sad. Someone says, well, people don't want to go out with the COVID shit going on, but the AEW 300 crowd is still pathetic. Let me just look up here. Jacksonville's population. Jacksonville, Florida population is about 1 million. So out of 1 million people with social distancing, They're getting 300 to Dynamite tapings. Okay. As Tom Armstrong says, shock, Orange Cassidy isn't a draw. Fred S. says Hannibal TV is better than AEW. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I can watch little Twitter clips of AEW. I can't watch the show. I can't get into it. As this guy says, it's too weird. John Lewis says he grew up in the 80s and WWE sucked so bad he stopped watching in 2013. I think it was 2005 I stopped watching like regularly. There was some periods before that where I went through sections of not watching it, but I think 2005 was like when I totally stopped watching Raw and SmackDown. Pedro says Bischoff kissed Stephanie a couple times in 2002. Was it a makeout or a kiss? And were they making out standing on top of Triple H? And was Triple H fired from WWE after that? The Big Bofetti says Stephanie was never the same after Macho's cock. Allegedly. Gorgeous George, Macho Man's ex, seems to say it's not so alleged. And I'm not allowed to say what Lanny Poffo told me. Which, by the way, yesterday was the 10-year anniversary of my incident with Lanny Poffo that I posted a clip of on my Devon Hannibal Twitter, which if you DM me on there, I'll follow you back. Horace Stew says he heard Aaron Stevens is booking Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is affiliated with NWA now. David Marquez is a producer. He's also one of the NWA bookers and producers. MLW still hasn't announced a return date that I've heard of, according to Horace Stew. They said they're looking into return dates, but as far as I know, they still haven't. I'm not going to say which talent I know and which ones. None of the MLW talent I know has received a paycheck in a long time, from what I understand. Harry Smith's dealings with them has been well documented. He could go to other companies, but they're not letting him, apparently. So I don't know if they have a TV deal now or if they're just on Fubu, whatever Fubu is, some type of app. I don't know if that counts as TV. To me, an app isn't a TV deal. Marlon Gage says MJF is like Orton in 2004, a short version of Orton. But all I've seen of MJF is a few promos here and there. I don't know him. I do know he's a small little guy, though. I'm not really a fan of the little wrestlers. Fred S. says he DVRs AEW, and it's so bad it takes him only 20 minutes to watch. TV company where no one watches commercials. Not sure how it's good for TNT. I don't know. No, I'm not still friends with Lanny. Horace Stew is excited for my jazz interview Saturday at 5 p.m. I actually have 3 interviews Saturday. 3. As you can see my calloused hands from all the lifting I've been doing. 10 a.m. Dangerous Danny Davis. Then I'm going to go to the gym. 5 p.m. Jazz. And 7 p.m. Rip Rogers. Speaking of Lanny Poffo, I know Rip Rogers is still friends with Lanny. So thanks for all your questions and comments. The Great North Wrestling Podcast link is in the description. Our The Hannibal TV merchandise page is in the description as well. Does Viva Vaughn have social media? Yes. By the way, I did an interview with her this week. People love her. Watch the interview to the end, and she says her social media. Have a great night or good morning, whatever you're doing right now. It's still night for me. I go to bed when the light comes out. The sun is my enemy.